While it is technically possible for the United States to use nuclear weapons against Iran, this idea needs to be understood in a very careful and realistic way. The United States has one of the most advanced nuclear arsenals in the world, including intercontinental ballistic missiles, submarine-launched missiles, and long-range bombers capable of delivering nuclear warheads over great distances with high precision. From a purely technical standpoint, this means the U.S. has the capability to strike targets almost anywhere on the planet, including Iran. However, capability alone does not mean effectiveness in achieving specific goals. Iran's military and nuclear-related infrastructure is not concentrated in one easily targetable place. Instead, it is widely dispersed across the country, with facilities located in different regions, often built deep underground or inside mountains to protect them from airstrikes. This makes it extremely difficult for any single attack, even a nuclear one, to fully destroy all critical components. In addition, nuclear weapons are not designed for precise, limited strikes in complex environments. While they are extremely powerful, their destructive force is broad and indiscriminate, which means they would cause massive damage beyond intended targets, including civilian areas, infrastructure, and the environment. There is also the issue of uncertainty. Intelligence about exact locations and the full extent of Iran's capabilities may be incomplete, meaning some facilities could survive even a large-scale attack. Furthermore, destroying physical infrastructure does not eliminate knowledge. Scientists, engineers, and technical expertise would still exist, allowing Iran to rebuild over time if it chose to do so. Another important point is that certain facilities, such as nuclear reactors or storage sites, if hit, could release dangerous radioactive materials into the air and surrounding regions, causing long-term environmental and health disasters not just within Iran but potentially affecting neighboring countries as well. This adds another layer of complexity, as the consequences would not be limited to a military objective but could create a humanitarian crisis on a massive scale. Additionally, modern military planning often favors more controlled and precise conventional weapons, such as bunker-busting bombs, which are specifically designed to target underground facilities without the widespread destruction of nuclear weapons. These alternatives are seen as more practical and less risky in achieving limited objectives. So while the U.S. does have the raw power and delivery systems to carry out a nuclear strike against Iran, the real-world military value of such an action is highly questionable. It would not guarantee the complete elimination of Iran's capabilities and could create far more problems than it solves. This is why military experts generally view nuclear weapons as tools of last resort rather than practical. Second, the political and global consequences of using a nuclear weapon against Iran would be extremely serious and far-reaching. Such an action would not just be seen as a military strike, it would be viewed as a historic and dangerous escalation that could change the entire global order. Since the end of World War II, nuclear weapons have only been used once in conflict, and ever since then, there has been a strong international effort to prevent their use again. If the United States were to break this long-standing norm, it would likely face massive criticism and condemnation from countries all over the world, including many of its own allies. International organizations like the United Nations would almost certainly step in, and emergency meetings would be called to respond to the crisis. Many nations would see the action as a violation of international law and humanitarian principles, especially because nuclear weapons cause widespread destruction that goes far beyond military targets and affects civilians on a massive scale. Another major concern is the risk of escalation. Iran would not simply accept such an attack without responding. Even if its nuclear capabilities were damaged, it still has significant conventional military power and influence across the Middle East through allied groups and regional partners. A nuclear strike could trigger a large-scale regional war, pulling in neighboring countries and possibly leading to prolonged conflict across multiple fronts. There is also the danger that other powerful nations, such as Russia or China, might react strongly, either politically or militarily, especially if they see their own strategic interests threatened. This could increase tensions between major powers and raise the risk of a broader global conflict, something the international community has tried to avoid for decades. In addition, using a nuclear weapon would damage the credibility of global agreements designed to stop the spread of these weapons, such as the Treaty on the Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons. Other countries might feel less pressure to follow these rules if they see a major power using nuclear weapons, which could encourage more nations to develop their own nuclear arsenals for protection. This would make the world more dangerous in the long term, increasing the chances of future nuclear conflicts. Economic consequences would also be severe, with global markets likely crashing, trade routes being disrupted, and sanctions or countermeasures affecting many countries, not just those directly involved. In short, while a nuclear strike might seem like a show of overwhelming power, its political and global consequences would be deeply destabilizing, creating risks that go far beyond the original conflict and potentially affecting the entire world for many years to come. Finally, there is the idea of deterrence, which is one of the main reasons nuclear weapons exist in the first place. Deterrence means that countries keep nuclear weapons not to use them, but to prevent others from attacking by making the cost of war too high. This idea became very important during the Cold War, when major powers like the United States and the Soviet Union both had large nuclear arsenals. Even though tensions were extremely high, neither side used nuclear weapons because they understood that doing so could lead to mutual destruction. This balance is often called mutually assured destruction, meaning both sides would suffer catastrophic losses, making the use of nuclear weapons pointless. In today's world, this same logic still applies. Even countries without nuclear weapons, like Iran, are part of a global system where nuclear use is strongly discouraged. If the United States were to use a nuclear weapon, it would break a decades-long pattern of restraint and could weaken this deterrence system. Other countries might start to believe that nuclear weapons are actually usable in conflict, which could lead them to develop or expand their own nuclear programs. This would increase global tension and make future conflicts much more dangerous. Instead of preventing war, nuclear weapons could start to encourage it, especially if nations feel they need them for survival. There is also a major humanitarian reason behind deterrence. Nuclear weapons are incredibly destructive, causing not only immediate explosions but also long-term effects like radiation sickness, environmental damage, and generational health problems. Events like the Hiroshima and Nagasaki bombings showed the world just how devastating these weapons can be. Because of this, many countries and organizations have worked for years to reduce nuclear risks and promote disarmament. Leaders understand that once a nuclear weapon is used, it could open the door to more use in the future, making the world far less safe. That is why, even in serious conflicts, nuclear weapons are seen as a last resort and are almost never considered a practical option.